So on to our next speaker, and I'm really, really excited and delighted to introduce you to Stephen Frost. He has a background in, and education actually, in financial services, and 10 years ago, Stephen founded WorkBuzz. His vision is to improve the lives of 1 million working people by 2022. WorkBuzz, the organisation that he founded, they help hundreds of organisations from small to large to build great cultures by gaining regular feedback from their people. Some of my research on Stephen ahead of today led us to find that many people describe him as very professional, which is just so timely given the conversation we were just having with Advita, Jenny and Trudy. He's highly intelligent and someone that always goes above and beyond for other people. Let's see if you live up to that, Stephen. Are you there?
I am here. Thank you very much. I hope it's been recorded. I want to share that with my mum, I think, so that, if that is being recorded. But what an amazing event. I think we're sort of 17 hours in, so I think you, Matt, as a whole team, has done an amazing job organising this so far and coordinating so much. And I think that video, I think for me, my sort of hairs on my neck begins to start to sort of stand up a little bit in terms of, I think it's such an amazing opportunity, sort of once in a generation opportunity that we now have in terms of really shaping how we work going forwards. A blank sheet of canvas is what all organisations have. So such an exciting time and an amazing event to be part of. So thank you very much.
You are very welcome. I'm going to hand over the baton to you now, Stephen. I think you've got some slides that you want to share. I'll come back on when you're done, okay?
Perfect. That sounds good to me. You can probably see I'm in the office today. We're sort of based up in in Milton Keynes. And the reason I'm in the office today, I've got two young children. One's old school Adelina, she's 4 today, which means she gets to watch as much Peppa Pig on the iPad or Disney on the tablet as well. And whenever she's on sort of streaming, it sometimes kicks me off. My internet goes a little bit sort of fuzzy. So I thought I'd come into our office today for some decent internet. And it's so strange being back in. I've been away for a few months, only person in the office. It feels really, really weird and almost back into sort of a pre-COVID world. People change their desks and sort of physical work environment all of the time. What I wanted to do today was talk to you about some of the things we've seen and heard from our clients, share with you some data as well from some of the engagements and employee experience surveys that we run to really understand what's gone well so far about how we've stood up and reacted to the pandemic and supported our people through the crisis. But more importantly, to talk about the future and talk about 2 or 3 themes that we think apply to nearly every organisation. And hopefully, and the goal is you can take away one nugget you can apply to your organisation and become a better place to work and seize the opportunity that is in front of us at the moment. So I'm going to share my slides up in a second. If you've got any questions, feel free to use the chat button. We'll sort of take them at the end. And likewise, I tend to have my smartest questions afterwards when I'm out the room. And feel free to pick up with me. I'll share my sort of contact details on the slides too. So I'm just going to switch across and share my screen. So you should be able to see some slides now. I think this won't be death by PowerPoint. There's some visuals I really wanted to share that reinforce a few of the key messages. So I'm going to talk about top 3 priorities for HR going forward, and every organisation is different. Every organisation will have different different challenges, different nuances. But I think these 3 things apply to nearly every organisation where we're at the moment. Maybe you further ahead in your journey than others. The first is really about prioritising employee wellbeing. I think we've done so well on the whole, supporting employees as individuals, as working parents, as people with sort of key workers, sort of spouses, as human beings going through their own challenges while adjusting to a new way of living. But it's such an important point now. I think in the UK, I know a lot of you will be listening overseas, but in the UK, we're in our 3rd lockdown. I know that around the world, lockdowns have been rolled into. People feel tired, but light is at the end of the tunnel. But it's so important to keep focusing on employee wellbeing for the coming months. So I've got a few takeaways of what we've seen our clients do really, really well, and a few things to reflect on and maybe sort of think about how you can apply it to your organisation. Second, we're going to talk a bit about preparing for a post-COVID world. We know at some point the pandemic is going to end. COVID may still be here. Maybe we have a sort of annual flu vaccine once a year, whatever it may be. But I believe in science. I think just as as I've been talking, there would have been dozens of people having their sort of vaccinations sort of just in the last few minutes. And the more we can start thinking about how we shape work afterwards, the bigger opportunity there is to make a huge difference to our people. And that as organisations, there's such an amount of disruption coming. Business models being ripped up, changed, employees' expectations changing as well. Those organisations that really thrive are going to have a game plan of how they come out of COVID and embrace those changes. Thirdly, I'm talking about becoming a more diverse and inclusive employer. Big focus at the moment, and want to show you a framework. Again, depends on where you're journey, able to use and apply to your sort of roadmap going forwards. So very quickly about WorkBuzz. These are some of the organisations we work with and are really proud to work with and call our clients. And really our focus is helping them to create a buzz at work by using employee feedback, insights and analytics. And what I'm going to do throughout the presentation is draw on some data points we've got from hundreds of organisations we've been gathering feedback from throughout the pandemic to really look at what's happening to the employee experience over time. What are we doing well, but also what are those sort of gaps we can sort of focus on and improve a bit more going forward. So we're going to draw on that data set too. And what we're going to also link back to some of the challenges we're hearing. We're hearing things like what's happening to employee well-being, particularly for organisations used to be in sort of on-site or in the office. Questions around, we've got less visibility for people. What's really happened as a culture? How are they feeling? Questions like, we're in a third lockdown in the UK, how can we support our people better? Or in particular types of employees really struggling. It may be working parents, as an example, as schools close, it could be other groups. And then as we look to the future, how do we make hybrid working, if that's not going to work for us? And how do we sort of get the best of both remote working and office-based working? That's the model we have. And then really watching HR sort of begin to think about now in terms of adapt to a post-COVID world. So see, some of these questions we're going to weave into the next sort of 15 minutes or so. So if we start then about prioritising employee wellbeing, I would say this is still the biggest area of focus, and it should be for most organisations, just because of huge amounts of stress that employees as humans are going through at the moment. If I just take us back to a year ago, this feels like a lifetime ago. This visual shows there's a number of COVID cases a year ago. You can see mainly constraints limited to parts of Asia. One single case in the US, really terrible news yesterday, about 400,000 deaths have passed. This feels like an age ago. And I can remember one of our clients in the power business had some sites in China and said to us, we're not including them in our employee survey at the moment because of some developments and some sort of seasonal flu or whatever it may be. We had no idea how things would pan out. And I think in terms of from an expectations perspective, when this first happens, certainly the UK has a lot to talk around. There's going to be a big surge of cases and then things are going to drop back down again. But it's going to end maybe in 6 months. And this is, I've taken this from an actual presentation we had with our team just before we broke up and went into the first lockdown. We've got our team together to talk through a bit of a roadmap how we can support each other going forwards. But we really believe, and I believed, by the time we get to the autumn, this would almost be over. I didn't think any of us really thought we would get to Christmas and we can't see friends and families. And we get to the January and February time the schools are shut. And obviously that hasn't happened. Huge amounts of pressure for our key workers doing an amazing job. So many hard times, some really good businesses have suffered. And it's not just, I think, about leadership, about the well-being of frontline employees. It's also people leading your companies too may have a lot of pressure on their shoulders, and sometimes the weight is upon them too. And I think employees are feeling tired now. I think when COVID first happened, there's a very real business impact, people concerns about their jobs, their finances, a lack of control. Whereas now what we're hearing and seeing more and more through our employee surveys is people just feeling tired, people feeling worn out, not knowing when is normal life going to return. So we talk about what organisations have done well so far, and I can talk about a few things to focus on going forward, which is hopefully the last leg of the pandemic as the vaccine gets rolled out. First of all, I think what is a huge, rapid digital transformation. So some organisations, you may have been set up for remote working right away, and kudos to you if all your stuff was on the cloud, people were set up for home working, but not every organisation was. We had a few clients, literally directors, drive to retail stores like sort of PC World and literally buy them out, clear them out of laptops because employees weren't set up to work from home. I think the amount of tools we've introduced in terms of most of us will have a Zoom or Teams call once a day. Just that agility, organisations probably achieve more in terms of that digital transformation agenda in the first 3 months of the crisis and pandemic compared to the last 3 or 4 years. So we should really celebrate that. What we've also seen in terms of employee listening is a huge shift from organisations moving away from annual biannual surveys that give you a good snapshot in time but can come quite dated quite quickly, saying we need to sort of have a closer view on how our employees are feeling, track well-being much more granular. So at Workbuzz, we've seen a huge shift to more sort of regular, shorter pulse surveys from organisations that used to rely mainly on annual surveys. From that data and from surveys we've gleaned through a wellbeing pulse that we created and offered free of charge, we found some really positive things and takeaways. So we found 9 in 10 employees say they're being kept informed of how their organisations respond to the pandemic. So that last session, some great sort of learnings being shared from some comms perspective. Some comms have really stepped up to the mark. People understand sort of how leadership want to sort of work through the crisis, understand the impact on them. The majority feel supported, especially by their managers. So 84% feel supported by their manager. And I know lots of organisations are focused on that, upskilling their managers to become better managers, even if they're working remotely, working on things like empathy as well. 9 in 10 trust their leaders to make decisions to protect them at work. And obviously, we've spoken a lot about disruption and shift to remote working, but we're also going to remember there will be millions of people in the UK and overseas. That's not an option because of the nature of their jobs. So equally, it's been really important to step up to that mark in terms of introducing measures to make sure workplaces are COVID secure. And we really put people at the heart of what we do in their wellbeing. So that's worked really well so far. We found with our engagement surveys slight upticks of employee engagements around the summer, but then sort of starting to decline a bit as people feel a bit tired and burnt out. But what we've also found alongside that, 6% more employees plan to stay working at their organisation 12 months' time. And that may be a combination of concerns about the job market, that's options out there. But equally, I think it's also a combination of people feel a bit more looked after. Leadership has stepped up to the mark in the main, have prioritised their people as human beings and their well-being. And that's sort of deepen that sort of connection they have to their employer. And I think organisations who have done this one, support their people through the crisis, are going to be remembered. I think employees will be asking, prospective employees will be asking in interviews, have you supported your employees through the pandemic? And organisations that haven't made value-based decisions, haven't communicated to support them in the right way, are those that will suffer. But in terms of the negatives, we found colleagues less satisfied with personal growth. That for some organisations that's gone on the back burner. Understandably in the short term, it's something we've got to remember going forwards. And at the moment, just that high risk of burnout, people feel tired, people feel worn down by lockdown after lockdown. And I'm just really grateful there's a vaccine because I hope that means light is at the end of the tunnel. And in terms of going forward, what I encourage you to think about is, especially running a larger organisation, you've got a collection of individuals with different circumstances. They could have a key worker as a spouse, maybe work in the hospital under huge amounts of pressure, juggling childcare at home and homeschooling. They could have a spouse who's furloughed and they've got money issues. And try to think about sort of your workforce with these different personas and trying to think how are you meeting their needs. And I think it's quite easy to be simplistic and make assumptions. It's quite easy to sort of have the jump around your colleagues that have children out of school, homeschool coming under lots of pressure. But equally, I remember seeing some data recently from one of our clients and they had some of their employees without children saying, actually, I'm under more pressure now because our team size is reduced. They may have gone on furlough because of homeschooling issues and young children, or it could be their working patterns reduced. And I feel under more pressure now, and I'm struggling to get my work done because it's taken longer than people come back to me. And data can be really important. So if you are running employee listening to the program or platform, if you can begin to break down your workforce into to have care and responsibilities and laser-like focus on help and support all of your employees as individuals. And I think, hopefully, we're at the last leg of the pandemic with vaccines being rolled out. So hopefully we're on the last leg, and let's build on all the good things we've done so far in terms of well-being and treating our employees as humans and individuals. Secondly, we want to start preparing for a post-COVID world, because this will end, it will be over, and there's a huge amount of disruption. And I think that last video really sums up that opportunity. Once in duration opportunity to really shape how we work and make work for us going forwards. There's huge amounts of change happening already. So we've seen that shift become more home-centric, the amount of people spending on their garden, home offices, extensions around that. Less people are going to be traveling to big city hubs 5 days a week for their commutes. Huge growth in online shopping, those organizations that thrive and those ones that have set up for online. Even those organizations that provide services, a massive shift to digital. One of my colleagues spoke recently. She went to the skates rooms event at the weekends. And think about skate rooms, a physical event where you're locked in a room. I can't think of anything more physical and harder to deliver digitally. But she said a really, really good experience. And that's the level of innovation is what's going to be happening more and more going forwards. That shift to digitalization, delivering not just services and the goods, but services digitally. And then new business models, huge amounts of disruption. So the question we've got to ask ourselves as people and HR leads is, what does that mean for our people strategy? And some really, really good insights from Burton around this is about a year of hiring, upskilling, agility, talent mobility. And it's trying to think around, as you've got a huge focus on digitalization, do you need an injection of those skills into your organization? It's trying to think, if you're going to move to more of a hybrid environment, how do your leadership competencies change? How do you upskill your managers to become better remote managers? I know one of the things Burton shared is at Disney, they relaunched their leadership development program to focus on topics like resilience, care, and empathy as a follow-on from the pandemic, and what they felt they needed their people to specialize in to become better leaders and better managers. So think about disruption, options for your organization, but then work back as what does it mean for a people agenda. In terms of hybrid and remote working, these are some stats from LinkedIn, sort of albeit sort of middle of 2020. We see that huge growth in number of applications for remote jobs. I know people now I've been talking to who won't take a job unless it's remote, or aren't willing to make that same sacrifice. Maybe getting paid slightly more money, but having that sort of long commute into a big city and long days, people are less willing to make those kind of sacrifices. And this trend is throughout most of Europe, where I know a lot of you will be on the call. So in terms of growth of job postings, you can see Spain almost 4 times more remote job postings since pre-pandemic levels. In the UK, similar number, Netherlands at 3.5 times. So unless we try to go back to the old ways of working 5 days a week in the office, a little bit of room for home working as a minimum, we're going to miss out a huge amount of talent pool. And as lots of organizations embrace that shift to hybrid or remote working on a longer term basis, a permanent basis, it's really important about how do we consciously maintain and evolve our culture. And one of the things we noticed at work does, we hired someone that I think his second day was lockdown number 1, so I've only met him sort of 3 or 4 times before, mainly for interview process. It's much harder to share your values as someone who is remote. We at work has probably relied a lot of that by osmosis, and just naturally being in the same office and having those sort of conversations, call into that success in a face-to-face moment. We've had to think a lot harder about how to do that consciously with a remote and distributed team as well. And I think with hybrid, it gets even harder at the moment because everyone's remote. everyone's in the same boat. And really, really good points. And there's an amazing book, sort of Own Your Culture by Breton Putter, who made the point, people are thinking when we go back to hybrid work, it's going to be easier. It's going to be harder because everyone's in a different situation. I think we can all relate to a time when maybe we've been the only person dialing into a call and everyone's been in a meeting room, and you miss out on those sort of corridor conversations, a little debrief afterwards. We need to consciously work at that. But one of the things we're doing at WorkBuzz is creating a culture deck. When we onboard new starters, we talk a lot about our values, but not enough for remote working. So on screen, I've got an example from HubSpot, some great examples on the link at the bottom, companies like Netflix, Spotify, and these are really detailed guides, some of them over 100 pages long, explaining and bringing to life the values with much more granularity than at WorkBuzz we've done in the past. And I think it's really important as you try to scale and grow an organization despite you've got a distributed team. So I think that's really worth thinking about going forwards. Embracing hybrid working, think about how do you align your people agendas to the biggest challenges and disruption your organization may be facing. And then finally, just a couple of minutes, no more than that, on becoming more diverse and inclusive employees. And we could spend hours on this, but just a few bits of context we wanted to share. Obviously, organisations with diverse teams perform better, different perspectives, less groupthink. You're recruiting from a diverse talent pool. You're more likely to make decisions that reflect your customers and have less blind spots. I think it's really sad, in a way, it's the death of a black man across the Atlantic killed by some policemen to really raise us back on the agenda again. But I think as leaders in HR, there's a big opportunity now to really get momentum and build more diverse and inclusive places to work. And I think there's different levels of maturity. For us, it's about three things. If we get right, really create a culture where people feel like they belong. And the first bit is around diversity. I think too often organizations focus solely on this. So they'll focus on, we want to understand the number of women in leadership roles at our company. We want to understand people from black backgrounds on the board, or people XYZ sexual preferences. Do we represent the sort of the country? And that's where it begins and ends. It's so much more than that. It's about creating inclusive places to work where people feel like they're heard, even if they've got a different background. They're willing to speak up, even if they've got a different point of view. It's about equality. It's about creating a place where if someone feels like they're going to raise an issue and it's the organisation going to listen and deal with that appropriately, they feel like everyone's got a chance to be the best versions of themselves possible. And if we get those three things together, that's when we're going to create this sense of belonging and really create a high-performing culture, have decisions made that reflects our customer base, recruit from diverse client bases, reflecting our talent pools, and we're doing the right thing. So just briefly on diversity and inclusion, because we've seen a huge amount of focus on it with our clients and sort of moving forwards. We just launched a free diversity inclusion pulse. If anyone would like to take part, it's no cost. We'll share the slides afterwards around that too. So if you are looking to get some objective data to look at maybe unconscious biases, something we'd like to help with on a no cost basis. So that's it from me. I think I'm right up to 20 minutes. So I'm going to stop sharing and go to any questions.
Hi, Stephen. We don't have questions to start as such, but we do have lots of messages wishing your daughter a very happy birthday. So is it Adelina?
It's Adeline. Adeline, yes, it's an unusual name.
Adeline, well, it's a very nice name. I have a 4-year-old here in this house. So we also had a comment that someone feels a bit bad for you being in the office on your 4th birthday. What dedication or commitment to this event? I have a 4-year-old in this building along with my twin babies. So yeah, I'm quite jealous of your office today.
It's quite nice to give a bit of a break.
You've actually summarised really well. A lot of the key points have been brought up today. We've discussed diversity and inclusion. We've discussed trust. You've shared an awful lot of data. So we will promise to follow this up for people that want to look at it in any more depth, or get in touch with you. Okay, so I'm going to have to say goodbye to you for now, Stephen. There's a little birthday wish to Adeline for you.
Thank you very much.
And I will be in, but we'll chat soon. Thank you so much, Stephen.
And have a great 2021, everyone. It's going to be much better year than last year.